There is a version of this story where Mackenzie Vaughan is still alive, and in that version, she waits. She enters the lottery like everyone else, she gets rejected twice like most applicants do, and eventually, months later, she gets her permit the honest way. That version of the story exists. It just isn't the one that happened, because 11 days before she died, Mackenzie found something on the internet that most visitors to Zion National Park never learn exists. A black market for the one thing money isn't supposed to be able to buy on that mountain. Since 2022, the National Park Service has required a permit lottery just to access the final chained section of Angel's Landing, a stretch of exposed sandstone ridge that has recorded 18 to 19 confirmed deaths since the trail opened in 1926. The lottery exists because too many people were dying trying to walk that ridge, and it works mostly by making access random instead of purchasable. What almost nobody outside a small circle of Zion locals knows is that a handful of unlicensed expediting guides have spent the last several years quietly selling a workaround, one that doesn't involve winning anything at all. Mackenzie Vaughan was 26, a travel and wellness influencer from San Diego with 10,000 followers and a content calendar that ran, according to people who worked with her, on almost military precision. She had applied for the Angel's Landing lottery twice, been rejected twice, and had a brand partnership deadline that didn't care about federal permit systems. 9 days before that deadline, she found a private Instagram account, run by a man who called himself a Zion Access Specialist, offering guided entry to the chains for select clients, no lottery required, for $9,500. His name, according to records later obtained by investigators, was Trent Ostrander, 34, a former seasonal trail worker who'd left the Park Service on bad terms 3 years earlier and had spent the time since building a quiet word-of-mouth business around a route almost nobody else knew existed. An unmarked approach that bypassed the ranger checkpoint entirely, climbing to the chains from a drainage on the ridge's blind side. It wasn't secret because it was safer. It was secret because it let him sell access to a section of trail the park had spent 3 years trying to make harder to reach. Mackenzie wired the money the same day. What she didn't ask, and what Trent didn't volunteer, was why a route this useful had never been added to any official map, or why the park itself had specifically fenced off the drainage he used with a small, easy-to-miss sign reading, "Closed area, unstable terrain, no public access." Trent had removed and replaced that sign so many times over 3 years that he no longer thought of it as a warning. He thought of it as a piece of equipment. They met before dawn on a Tuesday, well outside the park's official entrance, at a pullout Trent used specifically because rangers rarely patrolled it. He'd done this, according to what investigators later pieced together from his own client records, at least 11 times before, with 11 other people, and every single one of them had walked away with a video for their page, and a mountain that, as far as the park's own permit system was concerned, they had never legally set foot on. The climb up the drainage took nearly 2 hours longer than the official approach, over terrain that had never been graded, stabilized, or inspected by anyone. Because officially, according to the park's own records, it did not exist as a trail at all. Mackenzie filmed most of it, narrating for a video she planned to post that evening, joking to the camera that she'd found the actual secret way up, unaware of how literally true that sentence was, or what the word secret was actually protecting her from. Here's the part that should stop you, and I want to sit on it for a second before we go further, because it's the detail investigators kept returning to. When Mackenzie and Trent reached the chains from the blind side, they came out onto the ridge above the ranger checkpoint, not below it, meaning that even if a ranger had been stationed at the trailhead checking permits that morning, exactly as the system is designed to work, neither of them would have passed anyone. As far as the National Park Service was concerned, on the day Mackenzie Vaughan died, she was never there. Nobody at the checkpoint logged her. No permit record listed her name. If something went wrong on that ridge, there was no institutional reason for anyone to know to come looking. And that fact, more than the wet rock, more than the exposure, more than anything else about that day, is what actually killed her. The chains themselves, once they reached them, were unremarkable. The same stretch of 3-foot-wide sandstone that 300,000 legal permit holders cross safely every year. Mackenzie moved carefully at first, genuinely careful, filming reaction shots of her own hands gripping the chain until she reached the overlook roughly 2/3 of the way up. The same wide photogenic ledge where nearly every hiker on this trail stops to film something. Trent, ahead of her by a dozen feet, turned to get her in frame as she stepped toward the edge for a wider shot, the kind of shot that had made her page what it was. What happened next took, by Trent's own account to investigators, somewhere around 4 seconds. Mackenzie's boot caught a patch of shaded sandstone, still damp from an overnight temperature swing, damp in a way that wasn't visible from where either of them was standing, and her weight, already leaning toward the drop for the angle she wanted, had nowhere reliable to go. Trent lunged. He got a hand on her backpack strap for less than a second before the weight behind it pulled it out of his grip entirely. She fell just under 900 feet. Search and rescue located her body that afternoon, not because anyone had reported her missing through any official channel, but because a separate group of legal permit holders on the correct trail heard the fall and radioed it in. It took rangers another 6 hours to determine, through Trent's own hurried departure and a trail of digital breadcrumbs investigators found later, that Mackenzie hadn't been a permit holder at all. Her own family didn't know she'd left San Diego for Utah that week. Her assistant believed she was still location scouting in Sedona. For nearly 2 full days, the only person on Earth who knew exactly what had happened to Mackenzie Vaughn was the man who had sold her the shortcut, and he said nothing. Because saying something meant admitting that 11 other people had made the same climb with him and gotten away with it. He was eventually arrested and charged with operating an unauthorized commercial guiding service inside a national park and obstruction related to his delayed reporting of the incident. The park's investigation that followed identified and closed off the drainage route permanently, installing a reinforced barrier where the sign used to be, and quietly reviewed permit and ranger post protocols for blindside access points across the entire chained section. A review that, according to internal park communications later obtained through records requests, had been recommended twice before, in years prior, and never funded. Mackenzie's final video, the one she never got to post, was recovered from her phone during the investigation and eventually released to her family, who chose not to make it public. Those who have seen it describe the same detail, unprompted, every time. She is smiling, mid-sentence, saying something about finally getting the shot nobody else has, in the exact instant before the frame goes sideways and the audio cuts to wind. The park's fatality count for Angel's Landing officially remains at 18, because Mackenzie Vaughn was never, on paper, on that mountain at all. Somewhere in a filing cabinet in Springdale, Utah, there is a permit lottery record showing 0 applicants matching her name were ever granted access to the chains, a record that is, in the strictest technical sense, entirely accurate, and that is the part of this story that people who've heard it seem to have the hardest time sitting with. Not that she died. That the system built specifically to prevent it has no official record that it failed. What Mackenzie didn't have time to do was hit subscribe. I'm not saying that would have saved her. I'm saying you should probably do it anyway. If you've ever paid to skip a line you probably shouldn't have skipped, or you know a place with a shortcut nobody talks about, tell me in the comments. I'll keep finding these.